Emily Carter was the epitome of grace and intelligence, a woman who carried herself with quiet confidence and poise. She had built a life that many envied, one that glittered with the promise of success and contentment. Married to Charles Bennett, a man whose name was synonymous with power and wealth in New York City's elite circles, Emily seemed to have it all. Their marriage was the kind that friends admired and outsiders envied, a perfect union of status, charm, and apparent devotion. Together, they lived in a sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, surrounded by luxury that whispered of old money and new ambition. The grand chandelier in the entryway, the carefully curated art collection, and the gleaming floors reflected a life meticulously crafted to perfection. At social events, they were the couple everyone wanted to know, their smiles bright and their conversations effortlessly engaging. Their public image was impeccable. Yet beneath the sparkling surface, small cracks were beginning to appear, almost imperceptible, but there nonetheless. Charles was a man who thrived on control and success, but as the demands of his expanding empire grew, so did his absences from home. The late nights at the office became more frequent, his phone calls increasingly hushed and hurried. Emily, ever observant, noted these changes with a growing sense of unease. The once open conversations they shared dwindled into clipped exchanges, and the warmth that once characterized their relationship felt like a fading ember struggling to stay alive. She often found herself waiting alone in the quiet of their penthouse, the grand space suddenly feeling cold and distant. There were nights when she would catch a glimpse of Charles slipping out, glancing nervously over his shoulder as if hiding something precious from her view. These subtle hints built up, layering tension like an invisible wall between them. Emily's world, once secure and radiant, began to fracture the day she stumbled upon the first undeniable clue, an unfamiliar perfume scent lingering on Charles's jacket, a text message accidentally left open on his phone with a woman's name she had never heard before. Her heart pounded fiercely, the disbelief mixing with a cold, sinking dread. She read the messages, each word stabbing at her with the cruelty of betrayal. Yet despite the pain, she refused to let her emotions dictate her next move. Her mind raced through countless scenarios, grappling with the devastating truth she could no longer deny. She was caught between the sharp sting of heartbreak and the overwhelming urge to protect herself from the public humiliation such a revelation could bring. Emily knew that exposing Charles now would only bring chaos, not clarity. Her silence, she decided, would be her shield and her weapon. As the initial shock faded, Emily's inner monologue deepened into a quiet resolve. She understood that this was only the beginning of a longer, more complicated journey, one that required patience, strategy, and strength far beyond what she had imagined. The woman who once believed in fairy tales now recognized the harsh realities hidden behind the facade of wealth and love. But she was no longer the same woman who would crumble in the face of betrayal. She steeled herself, knowing that the path ahead was uncertain but refusing to let despair consume her. "I will not confront him yet," she whispered to herself in the stillness of their vast home, the words carrying the weight of a promise to herself. This was not the end of their story but the start of something much greater, an unfolding chapter where silence spoke louder than words, and resilience would be forged in the fires of betrayal. The memories came to Emily in sharp, vivid flashes, moments she had tried to suppress but that now surged to the surface with painful clarity. Charles's affair with Vanessa Reed, his assistant, was not a sudden revelation but a series of small, telling signs she had pieced together over time. Vanessa, young and ambitious, had entered Charles's world with the grace of someone eager to climb the ladder, her every smile and glance laden with intent. Emily remembered the way Vanessa's eyes lingered just a little too long on Charles during meetings, the way Charles's tone softened when speaking to her, and the stolen moments in the office that hinted at more than just professional interest. At first, Emily had dismissed these as mere imaginings born from insecurity, but the evidence steadily mounted, a whispered conversation overheard in the hallway, a text message flashing briefly on Charles's phone screen, the way Vanessa's presence seemed to fill the spaces Charles once reserved solely for Emily. These recollections unfolded like a silent film in her mind, each scene sharper and more heartbreaking than the last. Despite the storm brewing inside her, Emily became an unobserved watcher of their interactions, almost like a detective gathering evidence in silence. She kept her composure impeccably, never allowing suspicion to manifest in her demeanor or words. She noticed how Vanessa laughed a little too freely when Charles entered the room, how Charles's eyes betrayed fleeting moments of distraction when Emily was near. Emily's surveillance was subtle, not intrusive. She read between the lines of conversations, observed body language, and pieced together the pattern of betrayal without confronting either party. It was as if she was cataloging their transgressions in an invisible ledger, each entry adding to the weight she carried alone. There was a cold, almost clinical quality to her observations, a stark contrast to the chaos that churned beneath her calm exterior. Inside, Emily wrestled with an intense and complex conflict. The urge to expose Charles, to confront the infidelity head-on, was overwhelming at times, yet she deliberately chose silence as her weapon. She understood that loud accusations would only fuel gossip and scandal, diminishing her dignity and playing into Charles's hands. In the quiet of her own mind, she debated the merits of public confrontation versus strategic patience. Shame gnawed at her. How had she failed to see this sooner? Heartbreak surged like a tidal wave, threatening to pull her under. Anger flared, hot and sharp, yet alongside these raw emotions, a deep well of strategic thinking began to emerge. Emily realized that silence could serve as a form of control, a way to preserve her self-worth while watching her husband unravel. The power in silence lay not in submission but in choosing when, how, and if to respond. This internal struggle was exhausting, a constant battle between vulnerability and strength. In that moment, Emily made a conscious decision to focus on herself, to divert her energy away from Charles's betrayal and the toxic drama it wrought. She understood that clinging to anger or seeking immediate revenge would only tether her to pain and bitterness. Instead, she chose a path of quiet empowerment, building herself up, nurturing her own growth, and reclaiming her identity beyond the confines of a fractured marriage. This was not about ignoring the truth but about reclaiming agency. She envisioned a future where she was no longer defined by his actions or mistakes, a future where her happiness was self-generated rather than dependent on his loyalty. This resolve became her anchor, steadying her through the stormy days and sleepless nights that followed. The stark contrast between Emily's dignified silence and Charles's growing arrogance was impossible to ignore. Charles, oblivious to the quiet storm within his home, continued his affair with a sense of entitlement, convinced that his wealth and status made him untouchable. His arrogance manifested in careless remarks and dismissive glances, as though Emily's presence was merely a formality, an obstacle to be tolerated. He flaunted his power in boardrooms and social gatherings, unaware that the woman he underestimated was silently plotting her resurgence. Emily's silence was not weakness but a calculated shield, a form of resistance that kept her safe while allowing her to gather strength. It was in this tension between her quiet resilience and his brash confidence that the seeds of her eventual triumph were sown, laying the foundation for the transformation yet to come. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on Emily's heart and soul, an invisible burden that grew heavier with each passing day. Living in the shadow of Charles's infidelity drained her emotionally, leaving her feeling hollow and fractured. The mansion, once a symbol of their shared dreams and success, now felt like a gilded cage, its ornate walls echoing with memories of broken trust and silent tears. Every familiar corner, every carefully chosen piece of decor, reminded her of what had been lost, or rather, what had been taken from her without her consent. The laughter and warmth that had once filled their home were replaced by cold silences and empty spaces where intimacy once lived. Sleep became elusive, her nights haunted by restless thoughts and questions she dared not voice aloud. The loneliness amidst luxury was a cruel irony that Emily grappled with daily, the contrast between external opulence and internal despair impossible to ignore. In the solitude of her private moments, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The question haunted her relentlessly: should she stay and try to salvage what remained of their marriage, or should she walk away from the life she had painstakingly built? The decision was far from easy. Staying meant enduring the ongoing pain of betrayal, the constant uncertainty, and the erosion of self-worth. Leaving meant stepping into the unknown, abandoning financial security, social status, and the comfortable predictability of her existence. But as she weighed her options, the realization dawned that staying was no longer a choice but a slow surrender to misery. The courage to leave was not born from impulsive anger or desperation but from a quiet, resolute understanding that she deserved better. She owed it to herself to reclaim her life, her dignity, and her happiness. When Emily finally made the decision, she chose to leave silently, without drama or scandal. There would be no public accusations, no heated confrontations that would fuel gossip columns or ruin reputations. Instead, she embraced a dignified departure, one marked by grace, discretion, and strength. The night she packed her bags, she moved with calm purpose, selecting only the essentials she could carry easily. A few changes of clothes, treasured keepsakes that reminded her of her true self rather than the facade of marriage, and documents necessary for her new beginning. The mansion's grandeur faded into the background as she gathered these few belongings, each item a symbol of the life she was shedding and the new path she was forging. She left no notes, no goodbyes, just a quiet exit that spoke volumes about her resolve. Before stepping out the door for the last time, Emily paused for one final look at the home that had witnessed both her happiest and most painful moments. The sight stirred a complex mix of sorrow and determination within her. The walls that had once seemed so inviting now stood as silent witnesses to broken promises and shattered dreams. Yet, amid the sadness, a spark of fierce resolve burned bright. She understood that this ending was not a defeat but a beginning, a chance to rise from the ashes stronger than ever before. The image of the life she was leaving behind faded not with bitterness but with a hopeful clarity. She was not running away, she was running towards something greater. The tears she shed were not for what was lost but for the promise of what was to come. With the front door closing gently behind her, Emily whispered a vow that would sustain her through the challenges ahead. "I will come back stronger. And on my terms." Those words were more than a promise, they were a declaration of independence and self-worth. In that moment, Emily transformed from a woman broken by betrayal into one fueled by ambition, courage, and unwavering determination. The journey would be difficult, and the road ahead uncertain, but she was ready. Ready to reclaim her power, rewrite her story, and prove that silence and strength could be the most potent forms of revenge. This quiet departure marked the turning point, the moment when Emily began to forge her destiny on her own terms, far from the shadows of her past. Emily's journey to reinvention began the moment she stepped off the plane in San Francisco, a city humming with innovation and endless possibilities. Unlike the gilded halls of her former life in New York, here she was anonymous, just another hopeful face among thousands dreaming of success in the tech world. She had no financial cushion to fall back on, no influential connections, and no safety net to catch her if she fell. Every dollar she had was carefully budgeted, every move calculated with precision. The sprawling metropolis, with its vibrant energy and unyielding pace, was both daunting and invigorating. It was a blank canvas for Emily, a place where she could shed the painful past and rebuild from the ground up, fueled only by her determination and intellect. Starting from scratch was one of the hardest challenges Emily had ever faced. Without the support she had once taken for granted, she navigated a world unfamiliar to her, learning to survive and thrive on her own. She took on a variety of odd jobs, from waiting tables to freelance writing, anything to pay rent and buy the books she needed to educate herself. Nights were often long and lonely, filled with studying coding languages and devouring business strategy books. The tech community, though intimidating at first, became her new playground. She attended meetups and networking events, slowly forging relationships with like-minded individuals who could offer guidance and insight. Mentors emerged, seasoned entrepreneurs who recognized her tenacity and sharp mind, and they became invaluable to her growth. Their advice and support helped transform her scattered efforts into focused ambition. In the midst of struggle, Emily discovered an unexpected passion for technology startups. What began as a curiosity quickly blossomed into a burning drive. She was fascinated by the power of innovation to disrupt industries, to solve problems, and to create new opportunities. Her analytical mind and creative problem-solving skills found their perfect outlet in this fast-paced ecosystem. With every line of code learned and every pitch perfected, she grew more confident. Her grit and intelligence became her most powerful assets, propelling her forward when doubt threatened to take hold. When the opportunity arose, she launched her first startup, a platform designed to connect underserved communities with essential digital resources. It was a modest venture by Silicon Valley standards, but for Emily, it was a triumphant declaration of independence and capability. The road to success was neither smooth nor swift. Emily faced countless setbacks, failed prototypes, skeptical investors, and moments of overwhelming exhaustion. Yet each obstacle only strengthened her resolve. She learned to pivot quickly, to embrace failure as a stepping stone rather than a dead end. Her company grew steadily, gaining attention for its innovative approach and genuine social impact. Soon, Emily was spearheading multiple projects, diversifying her portfolio and attracting larger investments. Her reputation as a savvy and ethical entrepreneur flourished, opening doors to new partnerships and opportunities. Over the course of several years, what began as a single idea transformed into a business empire spanning sectors from technology to sustainable energy. Emily Carter, once a woman defined by betrayal and loss, had become a billionaire, her name now spoken with respect and admiration in boardrooms and conferences worldwide. Throughout this transformation, Emily evolved not only financially but also personally. The timid woman who had once questioned her worth blossomed into a confident, powerful leader who controlled her own destiny. She cultivated a presence that commanded attention without arrogance, blending intelligence with empathy and resilience. Her style became a reflection of this inner strength, sharp tailored suits replacing flowing gowns, purposeful strides instead of hesitant steps. She surrounded herself with a team that shared her vision and values, fostering a culture of innovation and integrity. Emily was no longer a bystander in her life, she was the architect of her future, shaping it with deliberate intention and unwavering belief. Her story became an inspiration to many, proof that reinvention was possible even in the face of profound adversity. The contrast between Emily's past vulnerability and her present empowerment could not be starker. The woman who once walked quietly through the halls of a mansion filled with secrets now stood tall on the stages of global summits, sharing her insights and experiences with audiences eager to learn from her journey. Where she had once hidden her pain behind silence, she now wielded her story as a source of strength and motivation. The lessons learned from heartbreak fueled her ambition rather than hindered it. Each success was not just a financial milestone but a personal victory over the doubts and fears that had once threatened to consume her. Emily's life was no longer defined by the betrayal she endured but by the incredible power she harnessed from it. In every sense, she had reclaimed herself, and in doing so, she had created a legacy far greater than anyone could have imagined. With her newfound billionaire status, Emily effortlessly stepped into the elite circles of high finance and corporate power, worlds that had once been inaccessible to her after her silent departure. Invitations to exclusive galas, private investment meetings, and high-profile conferences became a routine part of her life. These gatherings were filled with the titans of industry, venture capitalists, and influential board members whose decisions shaped entire markets. Emily navigated these arenas with a quiet confidence, her presence commanding respect not only because of her wealth but because of the reputation she had painstakingly built through innovation and integrity. She was no longer just the betrayed wife of Charles Bennett, she was a formidable force in her own right. Yet, beneath the polished veneer of these social and business interactions, Emily's keen eyes sought something far more strategic: information. It wasn't long before Emily's curiosity turned to concern when she learned that Charles's business empire was not only surviving but aggressively expanding. The Bennett Group, once a symbol of unshakable strength, was branching out into new industries and markets with remarkable speed. However, as Emily delved deeper, she realized this rapid growth masked a fragile foundation. Through discreet conversations with insiders and thorough analysis of financial reports, she uncovered troubling signs of arrogance and mismanagement. Charles, emboldened by years of unchecked success, had started making reckless decisions, cutting corners on quality, ignoring internal warnings, and dismissing loyal employees who questioned his tactics. These weaknesses, hidden beneath layers of prestige and publicity, left the company vulnerable to disruption. Emily's mind, sharp and strategic, immediately recognized this as an opportunity. With careful calculation, Emily began crafting a subtle but decisive plan to infiltrate Charles's business world. She resolved to acquire shares in his companies, not with a flamboyant show of power, but through quiet, incremental purchases that would fly under the radar. Using a series of holding companies and trusted intermediaries, she steadily increased her stake, navigating complex financial regulations and avoiding detection. Each transaction was a deliberate move on a vast chessboard, positioning her closer to control without alerting Charles or his inner circle. This methodical approach required patience and discretion, virtues Emily had honed since the early days of her reinvention. She understood that a direct confrontation in the marketplace would be premature and potentially destructive to her broader goals. Boardroom scenes became a new battleground for Emily's ambitions, but unlike Charles's brash style, she operated incognito. She attended shareholder meetings dressed impeccably, blending into the crowd as a quiet observer, taking notes, and listening carefully to every word spoken. The tension was palpable in these rooms, executives jockeying for influence, defending their decisions, and battling behind closed doors to maintain their status. Emily's presence, though not openly acknowledged, began to shift the dynamics. Her growing influence was felt in the subtle changes of tone, the cautiousness in Charles's remarks, and the guarded responses of his allies. She was a shadow moving through the ranks, her intentions hidden but unmistakable to those with the insight to see. This silent power play was as much about psychology as finance, undermining confidence in Charles's leadership while building trust in her vision. As Emily's stake grew and her network expanded, her takeover plan evolved from a quiet acquisition to an imminent reality. She strategically aligned with key shareholders and board members who shared her concerns about Charles's management, quietly rallying support for new leadership. Her reputation as a savvy businesswoman and innovator gave her credibility, allowing her to present herself as a stabilizing force capable of guiding the company to renewed success. The media, initially unaware of her connection to the Bennett legacy, began to take notice of the emerging power behind the scenes, a woman whose intellect and determination threatened to reshape the very empire her former husband had built. Emily's approach was calculated and composed, leveraging the weaknesses she had uncovered to position herself as the future of the Bennett Group, all while maintaining the silence and dignity that had become her trademark weapon. The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the hum of conversations blending with soft classical music as New York's elite gathered for one of the city's most anticipated galas. Emily, dressed in an elegant, understated black gown that spoke volumes of her confidence and refinement, navigated the crowd with the grace of a woman who belonged in every corner of that room. The years had transformed her, not just in wealth, but in presence. As she mingled, exchanging warm yet measured greetings with business leaders and philanthropists, her eyes suddenly locked onto a familiar figure across the room. Charles Bennett. The man whose name had once defined her world, whose betrayal had ignited her journey from silence to power, now stood mere feet away, engrossed in conversation with a group of investors. The moment their gazes met, a tense undercurrent rippled through the air between them. Charles's face registered a flicker of surprise, perhaps disbelief, at the sight of Emily. The woman he had once dismissed as fragile now exuded a calm, commanding aura that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. His carefully composed smile faltered for a heartbeat, replaced by a gaze that sought answers in her poised demeanor. Emily, in return, met his eyes with a steady, unreadable expression. Beneath the polite exterior lay a reservoir of emotions, pain, strength, and a quiet vindication that neither of them voiced aloud. Their interaction was a delicate dance of civility masking a storm of history, a power struggle played out without words. The crowd around them seemed oblivious to the electric tension crackling between these two former partners. Charles, ever the man of arrogance and control, broke the silence first, his voice smooth but laced with an edge of uncertainty. "Emily, it's been a long time. You look different." His words were a mixture of genuine curiosity and veiled challenge, as if testing the waters to gauge how much she had changed. Emily's response was measured, her tone calm yet assertive. "People change, Charles. Some for the better." The subtle implication hung between them, sharp and clear. She wasn't the woman he had betrayed, she was someone who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. The memory of their past intimacy flashed through Emily's mind, shared dreams whispered in the quiet of their home, the warmth of his touch before it turned cold with deceit. Those memories clashed violently with the present moment, where she stood not as a victim but as a force to be reckoned with. Their conversation, though brief, was charged with unspoken meanings. Charles's questions were cautious, probing for weaknesses, but Emily's answers revealed none. She spoke of her work, her ventures, the challenges she had overcome, all with a steady confidence that unsettled him deeply. He realized, perhaps too late, that the woman he had underestimated was now in control of more than just her own destiny. The roles they once played, lover, husband, wife, had been replaced by adversaries circling each other in the arena of business and power. The gala, with its glittering facade, had become the stage for this silent confrontation. As the encounter drew to a close, Emily's gaze held Charles's for a moment longer than expected. Her eyes, clear and resolute, conveyed a warning without a single word spoken aloud. The mask of polite smiles faded from her face, replaced by an intensity that left no room for doubt. "You underestimated me," she thought, her silent declaration hanging in the air as she turned and walked away. Charles watched her go, the realization settling like a cold weight in his chest. The woman he had once betrayed was no longer someone to be dismissed or controlled. In that fleeting exchange, the balance of power had shifted irrevocably, and the battle for the future was just beginning. Emily's plan unfolded with deliberate precision as she steadily increased her shares in Charles's companies, each acquisition a careful step closer to controlling interest. Behind the scenes, she used the financial acumen and strategic insight she had honed over years of building her own empire to navigate complex stock markets and corporate regulations. Unlike Charles's reckless expansions, Emily's approach was calculated and patient. She understood the value of timing and subtlety. Through a web of discreet transactions and trusted intermediaries, she quietly amassed a significant stake, far beyond what anyone suspected. The slow, invisible shift in ownership went unnoticed by many, but it was the foundation of the seismic changes to come. Charles, initially oblivious to the quiet encroachment, began to sense that something was amiss. His confidence, once unshakable, gave way to uneasy suspicions as board members grew more reserved and meetings became more guarded. Whispers circulated about mysterious shareholders with growing influence, but Charles dismissed them as rumors or distractions. However, the reality soon hit with undeniable force. As Emily's stakes surpassed key thresholds, she gained the power to influence decisions and challenge the authority Charles had long wielded without question. His empire, once firmly under his control, now teetered on the edge of a hostile takeover, not by a rival company, but by the woman he had betrayed and underestimated. The slow realization dawned with a chilling clarity: his past arrogance was unraveling before his eyes. With control came the ability to enact change, and Emily moved swiftly to reshape the company's leadership. Recognizing that many of Charles's closest allies were loyal more to him personally than to the business's success, she began a tactical campaign to replace key executives with leaders who aligned with her vision and values. These decisions were not public spectacles but quiet boardroom maneuvers, strategic votes, confidential negotiations, and firm but respectful firings. Each change strengthened her influence and weakened Charles's hold, sending a clear message that the era of his unchecked rule was ending. The boardroom, once a stage for Charles's dominance, transformed into a battleground where power plays unfolded with subtlety and resolve. Tensions ran high as factions shifted allegiances, alliances formed and dissolved, all under Emily's watchful and unyielding eye. Amid the corporate chess game, Emily found quiet satisfaction in every victory. There was no need for grandstanding or public displays of triumph. Her satisfaction came from the knowledge that her plan was succeeding exactly as intended. Each milestone reached, each vote won, each executive replaced, was a testament to her resilience and strategic brilliance. The contrast to Charles's brash and often reckless leadership was stark. Emily led with composure, clarity, and an unwavering focus on long-term success rather than short-term ego. Her quiet confidence resonated throughout the company, inspiring loyalty and respect from employees who yearned for stability and visionary guidance. This was her moment to redefine the legacy that Charles had tarnished. When the time was right, Emily made a public announcement that sent shockwaves through the business world. She now owned controlling interest in the Bennett Group. The media frenzy that followed was immediate and intense. Headlines splashed across financial news outlets, social media buzzed with speculation, and industry analysts scrambled to understand the implications of this unprecedented takeover. Reporters dissected every detail of Emily's journey from silent wife to powerful businesswoman, framing it as a story of resilience, strategy, and poetic justice. Yet through the cacophony of public scrutiny, Emily remained composed and unshaken. She chose her words carefully in interviews, emphasizing her commitment to the company's future and its employees rather than dwelling on past betrayals. Her poised demeanor contrasted sharply with the sensationalism swirling around her, reinforcing her image as a leader who prioritized substance over spectacle. As the dust settled, it became clear that Emily's takeover was more than a financial transaction, it was a transformation. The company that had once symbolized Charles's dominance was now under the stewardship of a woman who had rebuilt herself from heartbreak to billion-dollar success. Emily's victory was not just about owning a fortune, it was about reclaiming power, dignity, and respect on her own terms. The business world watched closely as she set about redefining the Bennett Group's future, proving that silent strength and calculated strategy could topple even the most entrenched empires. Emily's revenge was unlike anything anyone expected. It wasn't fueled by cruelty or a desire to humiliate Charles, but by a deep commitment to justice and empowerment. She rejected the temptation to seek petty retribution or public scandal, understanding that true victory lay not in tearing someone down but in rising above the pain with integrity and purpose. Her focus was clear: to transform the company she now controlled into a beacon of innovation and ethical leadership, proving that success built on respect and vision far outweighed the empty triumph of vengeance. Emily's approach redefined what it meant to reclaim power after betrayal. She wielded it not as a weapon for destruction, but as a force for positive change. Immediately upon taking control, Emily set to work restructuring Charles's company with meticulous care and strategic insight. She recognized that behind the scenes were countless employees whose livelihoods depended on the business's health, people who had little to do with the personal drama that had unfolded at the top. Rather than dismantle the company for profit or spite, she invested in its future, streamlining operations, improving corporate governance, and fostering a culture of transparency and collaboration. Her initiatives boosted morale and productivity, creating an environment where innovation could thrive. Under her leadership, the company's value not only stabilized but increased significantly, attracting new investors and customers who respected the ethical turn the business was taking. Emily's vision was holistic, recognizing that true justice included safeguarding the well-being of those whose lives were intertwined with the company's success. While Emily's professional triumph was undeniable, Charles's reputation suffered in the wake of her takeover, but not through malicious gossip or public shaming. Instead, his fall was marked by a gradual erosion of trust and credibility in the business world. Investors questioned his judgment, industry peers distanced themselves, and his past arrogance became a cautionary tale rather than a mark of prestige. Yet, Emily deliberately refrained from attacking him personally. She understood that dismantling a person's reputation through bitterness would cheapen her victory. Instead, she let his professional missteps speak for themselves, allowing the natural consequences of his decisions to unfold without interference. This measured approach reinforced Emily's image as a leader driven by principle rather than vindictiveness, strengthening her standing both inside and outside the company. Beyond the boardroom, Emily balanced her burgeoning business empire with a growing commitment to philanthropy. She established initiatives focused on empowering women entrepreneurs, supporting education in underserved communities, and championing sustainable business practices. These efforts were not only expressions of her values but also a reflection of her journey from betrayal to empowerment. Through philanthropy, Emily found a way to give back, to create positive ripples far beyond the confines of corporate power. This blend of business acumen and social responsibility became a hallmark of her leadership style, inspiring others to see success as a vehicle for meaningful change. Her philanthropic work was a testament to the strength that comes from transforming personal pain into purpose. In quieter moments, Emily often reflected on the complex emotions that had carried her through this transformation. Forgiveness was not an easy or linear process. It required her to confront bitterness, grief, and anger head-on, then choose to release them rather than be defined by them. She recognized that power, true power, was inseparable from self-worth and inner peace. Her journey had taught her that strength was not about dominance or control but about owning one's story and moving forward with grace. These reflections deepened her resolve to live authentically, prioritizing her well-being and values over external validation. Emily's story became a powerful reminder that revenge could be reimagined, not as a cycle of harm but as a path to justice, healing, and empowerment. Choosing strength over bitterness was Emily's final, and perhaps most profound, act of revenge. She understood that clinging to resentment would only trap her in the past, while embracing resilience opened the door to a future defined by possibility. Her life, rebuilt on foundations of dignity, justice, and compassion, stood as a testament to the transformative power of choosing one's response to adversity. Emily's legacy was not merely in the billions she amassed or the company she led but in the example she set for others facing betrayal and hardship. That true victory comes from rising above with courage and integrity, forging a life where strength and kindness coexist. Emily's life had transformed in ways she had once only dreamed of. No longer just a woman overshadowed by betrayal and heartbreak, she had become a respected billionaire and philanthropist whose influence extended far beyond the business world. Her journey from silent suffering to powerful leadership had earned her admiration from peers and strangers alike. She moved through the world with a quiet assurance, a woman who had mastered the art of resilience and grace. The philanthropic foundations she established were thriving, supporting causes close to her heart: education for underprivileged girls, mental health awareness, and programs empowering women entrepreneurs. Her work was a testament not only to her success but to her commitment to giving back, shaping a legacy built on compassion as well as achievement. In the midst of this new life, Charles made a hesitant attempt at reconciliation. He reached out through intermediaries, sending messages that oscillated between regret and longing. His public image, diminished but still intact, carried whispers of remorse for past mistakes and hopes for a second chance. However, Emily stood firm. Her strength was no longer tethered to the man who had betrayed her. It was rooted in her own self-worth and the life she had painstakingly rebuilt. She met his attempts with calm refusal, understanding that true closure came not from revisiting old wounds but from moving forward with dignity. This decision was both a boundary and a declaration. Emily would no longer allow her happiness to depend on Charles or his approval. Her focus was on the present and the future, not the past. Emily's personal growth was evident not only in her professional triumphs but also in the richness of her relationships and her deepened self-love. She cultivated friendships based on mutual respect and genuine connection, surrounding herself with people who celebrated her authentic self rather than the image she once had to maintain. Romantic relationships, when they came, were grounded in honesty and equality, a stark contrast to the painful dynamics of her marriage. More importantly, Emily nurtured a compassionate relationship with herself. She embraced her flaws and celebrated her strengths, understanding that self-love was the foundation of all other love. This inner transformation was reflected in the way she carried herself, radiant, confident, and unapologetically whole. A flash forward to a grand gala encapsulated the culmination of Emily's journey. The event was a celebration of her achievements and impact, attended by luminaries from across industries, philanthropists, and media. The room was filled with applause as she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating a woman who had risen from silence to power with unwavering grace. As she took the microphone, Emily's voice was steady and resonant, carrying the weight of experience and the lightness of hope. She spoke candidly about resilience, betrayal, and success, acknowledging the pain that had shaped her but emphasizing the strength that had defined her response. Her words inspired many, turning her personal story into a universal message of empowerment and transformation. In her speech, Emily shared the lessons she had learned, that silence is not always submission, that pain can be a catalyst for growth, and that success is sweetest when earned through integrity and perseverance. She spoke of the importance of choosing one's battles wisely, of valuing oneself above all else, and of embracing the journey, no matter how difficult. The audience listened intently, moved by the authenticity and courage behind her words. Emily's story resonated deeply because it was not just about wealth or power, but about reclaiming identity and forging a path forward in the face of adversity. As the evening drew to a close, Emily left the crowd with a final, powerful line that captured the essence of her transformation: "I stayed silent because I was preparing to roar." Those words echoed through the hall, a declaration that silence had never been weakness but the quiet before a mighty storm. Emily's roar was not one of anger or revenge, but of triumph, resilience, and self-realization. In that moment, she embodied the truth that sometimes the greatest strength lies in waiting, in planning, and in rising at the perfect time. Her journey from betrayal to empowerment was complete, and her future shone brighter than ever, a testament to the power of silence transformed into roar. 1 year after her dramatic rise to power, Emily Carter's empire was thriving more than ever. The Bennett Group, once a symbol of her former husband's unchecked arrogance, had been transformed into a beacon of innovation, ethical leadership, and sustainable growth under her stewardship. Markets responded positively to the changes she implemented, investors praised her visionary approach, and employees flourished in the new culture of respect and opportunity she fostered. Emily's business ventures had expanded beyond the original company into new sectors like renewable energy and technology, each project reflecting her values and commitment to making a meaningful impact. Her name had become synonymous not just with success, but with integrity and empowerment, a legacy far richer than mere wealth. Stories began to emerge from women around the world who found inspiration in Emily's journey. Letters poured into her philanthropic foundations, emails filled her inbox, and social media buzzed with testimonials from those who had followed her example. Women shared how Emily's story gave them courage to leave toxic situations, to pursue their dreams, and to reclaim their power. Many credited her for showing that silence in the face of betrayal was not weakness, but a strategic pause that could lead to profound transformation. These stories became a source of motivation for Emily, fueling her desire to pay forward the strength she had cultivated. She saw her success not just as a personal victory but as a platform to lift others, turning her journey into a collective movement of empowerment. Meanwhile, Charles Bennett's presence in the business world faded into obscurity. Once a titan whose decisions influenced markets and headlines, he found himself sidelined by the very empire he had built and lost. His attempts to regain influence were met with skepticism, his reputation tarnished by past mistakes and the quiet but effective dismantling of his power base. Industry insiders regarded him as a cautionary tale, a man undone by arrogance and misplaced priorities. Emily's rise had not only overshadowed him but rewritten the narrative entirely. The business community had moved on, embracing the new era she embodied, one defined by resilience, innovation, and ethical leadership. Emily's commitment to mentoring young women entrepreneurs became one of the cornerstones of her legacy. She established mentorship programs, hosted workshops, and personally guided dozens of ambitious women navigating the challenges of starting and growing their own businesses. Her approach was hands-on and deeply empathetic, drawing on her own experiences of struggle and triumph. She encouraged them to embrace their vulnerabilities as sources of strength, to be strategic in their decisions, and to never let setbacks define their worth. Through these efforts, Emily cultivated a network of empowered women leaders who carried forward her vision of inclusive and responsible business. Her influence extended beyond her own companies, shaping the future of entrepreneurship for generations to come. Reflecting on her journey, Emily often acknowledged how pain had become her greatest fuel. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy her had instead ignited a fire of determination and clarity. She understood that adversity, while painful, could catalyze growth and self-discovery when met with courage and wisdom. This perspective shaped not only her business philosophy but her personal life as well. Emily embraced the complexities of her story, the heartbreak, the resilience, the quiet victories, as essential threads in the fabric of who she had become. Her reflection was a testament to the power of transforming suffering into purpose, showing that wounds, when tended with care, could heal into sources of strength. In closing, Emily's message to the world resonated deeply: sometimes silence is the loudest roar of all. These words encapsulated the essence of her transformation, from a woman who chose silence in the face of betrayal to one whose quiet strength reshaped empires and inspired countless lives. Her legacy was not just about the fortune she built or the companies she led, but about the profound truth that power and grace often dwell in patience and resilience. Emily Carter's story became a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, the choice to remain silent can be the prelude to the most powerful roar.